And that means that 90% of the cases are now gone. Hey, what's up guys, Mashine here, come back with a very interesting video for you guys. Today we're going to be talking about the 90% disappearance of a certain case in 6 months. Let's hop on into it. Now this case has been disappearing for a while. We got to head back 6 months to start this video because obviously we're talking about a 6-month span here. 6 months ago I made a video about 500,000 danger zone cases going missing, and lately we've just seen some more of them. But in this past video I talked about how 500,000 cases went missing, which was over 50% of the total market at that time. Fast forward to today, we've just seen another 150-ish to 200-ish thousand cases leave the market for the danger zone case, leaving it at around 90 to 95,000 cases listed on the market, which is only 10% of what was there 6 months ago. Now let's talk about who could have potentially did this. Now there's a lot of ways CSGO cases can go up, but there's usually some telltale signs from the graph. Something like this, which is what we saw for the danger zone case, is not necessarily FOMO. FOMO is not spread out over a couple hours, it's usually spread out over a couple days. Something like this had a very high amount of quantity being sold in a very short time period, leading me to believe that it was most likely someone picking up a lot of these cases for an investment purpose. This is important because we know there's a lot of big whales out there, one of which I've made an entire video about. That's Jawar. You can find him in my comment section once in a while. Other people, we've got LT Blue, who's got a ton of things as well. There's a lot of CSGO whales out there that have a ton of cases. You can see Jawar's on screen right now. He's got a ton of cases. But the thing is, it wasn't either of these two people from my knowledge, at least at this point, which is not unlikely considering there's a ton of people that buy up CSGO cases. Even your favorite YouTubers probably have a decent amount of cases, although nothing to this extent. Now let's talk about the market impact for something like this, because there is a surprisingly high amount of impact that is here that wasn't with the previous instance of this. So we talked about basically a couple months ago, 500,000 were deleted off the market. They were taken, someone bought them. That really didn't have too much of a market impact long term. Let's be honest, they still had 400,000 left on the market. But this is a little bit different. See, now we're getting into the lower amounts on the market. Obviously, there's about 100,000 listed already. The quantity keeps on going back up, but there is not a ton of them in my opinion. If we want to look at the price points for the case, you can see here that at each price point, at least at this point, there's not a ton of them listed, whereas this was not exactly the case when we talked about it in the previous instance. Now, in my opinion, the danger zone case still has a long way to go to be comparable to some of the other cases that it's sitting around that price point at. I think, in my opinion, I would opt for the Horizon case if I was investing in at this time. But honestly, situations like this are good for pretty much everyone who's already invested into the case. If someone is spending a ton of money buying it up at this price point, it basically sets the precedent that it most likely is not going to go back below the price point that they were buying at when they started. I mean, obviously, if you want to compare it to the peak, it's probably going to go down, but you compare it to the 18 cents-ish that they started buying up a ton of these cases at, and it's most likely not going to go below or below by much those prices in the future. At the time I'm getting to this, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to figure out exactly who the buyer was because they're done buying at least at this point, and it seems like this is roughly where we're gonna sit at. But we can head over to some other third-party sites, and if you look on Buff, it seems like the price point there was rising pretty much how the Steam market was. It was going up around 25%, going from 12 cents to 15 cents USD over there. Obviously, it's not the best comparison because they're obviously using the Chinese yuan, but still, it's definitely got some increase over there. However, I would most likely say this seems like a following trend rather than the trend that was getting the Steam price up. Basically, the Steam price most likely went up first, in my opinion, based off these graphs. Now, let's talk about what this really means for you. Now, if obviously you're invested in, it's probably going to be beneficial for you when something like this happens, but let's talk overall about the danger zone case for just a quick minute. Now, the danger zone case is not particularly special. It doesn't have a super large ROI sitting at 46.4% with a case price of 16 cents, so that's probably going to go down a couple percentage points soon as the website updates. And talking about some other things, it's probably a case that's pretty heavily invested into, but not as heavily invested into as some. As we mentioned before, there's a lot of whales out there. The Prisma case is one that's invested into by a significant amount of whales, and therefore that could be some of the reason why this person opted for the danger zone case here. This person could also be the same person that bought up 500,000 of those danger zone cases previously, in which case it makes sense for them to buy up again. And the reason it makes sense for them to buy up again is because this is very likely going to be the buying up period that helps propel the danger zone case up to a significant price. Right now it's sitting at maybe 18 to 20 cents. But what happened here is because they went ahead and bought up all these cases, it just basically took away the time that's needed for the case to mature into a better investment. Obviously, they're going to run into some issue whenever they try to liquidate these off, assuming that someone who bought them up was indeed doing so for an investment purpose, but that's a problem for down the line. That's a problem when the case is completely irrelevant and it's sitting at $3 and there's no movement at all. That's a problem for down the line, and right now all they did is potentially take off 6 to 8 months of the case with a slow movement. And to give a little perspective here, 6 months ago the case was sitting at 400,000 quantity, and yesterday it was sitting at 250-ish thousand quantity, meaning it took 6 months for 150,000 quantity to be taken off the market. Now this is not the best comparison, but stick with me. They basically just bought up 6 months worth of time for this case because they bought up another 150,000 of these cases. And when something like this happens, you see a lot of people rushing to list their investment, which is really good for the people who are invested in because it's more quantity movement, and it's more likely that the people who are buying up this case may not be doing so for an investment purpose. Talking about unboxing numbers for this case, the unboxing numbers are still relatively high. If we look at December, there was a 500,000 there. November, there was about 800,000 there. So there's definitely a lot of people still interested in opening up the danger zone case, which is another reason why potentially the person who bought up all these cases opted for the danger zone case over some other cases that are at similar price points. The amount of cases on the market doesn't really matter when you plan to buy up 90% of the total quantity. And talking about the case market in general, I think this is a great example of what we're probably going to see as more common. Soon as a case gets moved into the rare drop pool, I think at this point it's quite likely that we're going to see the price just absolutely skyrocket due to investors more than we've seen in the past. Whenever that clutch case does get moved to the rare drop pool, I think we can expect to see a pretty significant price increase, even though the quantity of the clutch case is absolutely massive at this time. People grossly underestimate how many clutch cases are out there. As with every case, there is tons of cases out there. Every single month there is tons dropped, and these cases that were out there in the active duty pool for a year or 2 years have tons of them out there that people don't really realize. With all that and everything being said, make sure you're not just investing into a case because of a hype. Even though a hype like this is good for the people who are invested in, it doesn't mean it's going to happen again tomorrow or anything like that. Make a smart decision when you're investing in. Don't just listen to anyone on the internet. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.